Welcome to the show this Friday. I hope you're well. The days are getting longer. The world is getting a bit lighter, hopefully, for everybody. And it's my absolute privilege and pleasure to say that we're going to have an excellent session. I think it's going to be good fun, but also insightful and inspiring, because we have the very famous Sarah Warby joining us today. Good morning, Sarah, and welcome.
Hello.
Hello, Sarah.
My video's been stopped. I don't know. Okay, here we go.
Okay, well, whilst I'm there, we go. Ah, brilliant. Ta-da. Very good. Welcome, Sarah. And
I feel like I've just jumped out of a cake.
There we go. What a privilege it is to have you on. So you know this, Sarah, I think, but I'm just going to flatter you a bit. You're somebody that I've got huge admiration for. I was very fortunate to do the Marketing Academy Fellowship with yourself, and actually Craig as well, who's on in 2015. It's not a competition, but it obviously was the best year for that fellowship program. You've had an amazing career. Started in Unilever, did this, moved agency side, moved around the other side of the world, came back here, worked in beer for about a decade. So know your way around that sector. You've done the startup thing twice over. And I think you can tell us a bit more about what your next gig is going to be, because that's now public knowledge. You're also a non-exec. You've been marketing leader of the year. You're one of the most authentic people I know. You've got a lovely wry and dry wit, and I'm sure we'll get that coming through. And loads of progressive thoughts, and I know everyone's going to get a huge amount out of it. So it's amazing to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me. No pressure. I'll do my best at this hour on Friday morning.
Let's get started. Over to you, Ritchie. First question. Let's get going.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. And look, Sarah, awesome to have you on. It really is amazing. Sarah, you know, clearly lots has changed from you in your world over this, I guess, this sort of period of time over the last year. So tell us how you're feeling and how's it sort of been through this a bit of transitionary period?
Well, it's funny, isn't it? Whenever anyone says, how you doing and how's it been for you? I sort of feel I need to start with big picture. I'm very lucky. And I'm sure that sort of sounds relatively familiar. You know, everyone I love is well. I live in a house with enough space that we haven't all been on top of each other. We have enough computers that everyone's been able to do their thing and connect to their people and do their work and their schooling. We can get outside. You know, big picture, we're completely fine. And I feel very, very fortunate. Slightly smaller picture, you know, it's had its moments. And, you know, just because we're lucky doesn't mean that there are times when it doesn't get you down a bit or get a bit crappy. So I've got my stuff, but big picture, I feel lucky and really optimistic about the light at the end of the tunnel.
So Sarah, I mean, it sounds like, you know, you've got all the right infrastructure in place, but my perception is you're somebody who feeds off the energy of others and likes to sort of really, you know, motivate and inspire in a very personal way. So, I mean, what have you learned during lockdown? How you still sort of get that buzz and energy and vitality?
I think you're spot on, Mark. Very, very insightful. I get lonely relatively easily. I like being alone. So, you know, at the risk of hopelessly quoting E.M. Forster at you, you know, only connect is, and I don't mean the quiz show, I mean the sentiment about the stuff of life, is really important to me. And I yes, there's a danger that without human contact, personally, I feel myself starting to slightly wither and calcify. And so I guess it's just about getting to treat this as contact. Mm. And the only real change that has made is if you and I were talking over a cup of tea, I wouldn't be wearing my glasses. But on a screen, you, my friend, count as close work, and I can't see you unless I'm wearing them. And that's probably the biggest, you know. So, you know, I've just got to the point of, you know, it's the words, not the proximity, that counts as connection for me. And actually, it's quite inspiring watching your children just totally roll with it. You know, I've got an 8-year-old and a 12-year-old who have just been amazing. And watching them adapt to weirdness upon weirdness upon weirdness has sort of made me buck up my ideas.
Interesting. And by the way, I think you forgot to mention that if you guys were just having a cup of tea, we wouldn't have such a great audience watching you guys natter away as well. So, maybe that's one other great benefit of what we're doing at this point in time. But look, Sarah, let me take you back.
That's totally true. That's totally true. Trying to join a new business, I can just get to see people like that. I haven't go to Aberdeen or Johannesburg to meet people. You're absolutely right. We've all kind of benefited from that. And sometimes you have conversations with new people on Zoom that you would never have over a cup of tea.
Absolutely. No, I totally agree with you. But look, Sarah, let me take you back a little bit. You've done some mega jobs. I mean, talking about climbing the corporate ladder, but actually both, across a range of massive companies and smaller ones that you've been able to do, and you've really diversified your career in that way. But I mean, join some of those career dots for us, and perhaps what do you think are some of the key ingredients to that success?
I was 50 last week, so this could take a long time. Please don't miss the opportunity to jump in and go, you can't be 50, Sarah.
You can't be 50, Sarah.
You can't be.
Yeah. Dear God.
Was my timing good there?
Timing was brilliant. You guys...
It was the broadband lag, by the way. That was it. There was nothing else.
Totally. I hate you both. I mean, you could boil my career down to, I learned the ropes, I got restless and went and did something else. Then I kind of realized what I really liked doing. So I spent more time doing that in big companies with amazing brands, and I got the chance to sort of hone and develop my skills. And then I got restless again. And I wanted to do something different and slightly reinvent myself. So I went into a more modern environment of a FinTech startup. And I did that sort of in a fairly deep end way. And then I calmed down a bit and prioritized happiness over everything else. So what do I learn along the way with that? Excuse me. I get excited about that big thing. I get excited about there's some opportunity over there, and I will run at it head first. And I like that energy. That kind of suits me. But then there's a pattern of when I get restless, I have to act. So there's, I guess the overall theme here is listen to I'm okay at listening to the voice in my head. I don't sort of plow on, and we all suppress the voice in our head for a bit, don't we? And go, it'll come good. But the restlessness for me was kind of always based in, there's something I'm missing. There's something I haven't learned yet. I haven't mastered that. I want to, and my learning style is an activist learner. I just have to go in the deep end and try it. And that's what characterizes, so from Unilever to agency, I don't understand how agencies work. I need to work out how to get better work out of agencies. Well, I could talk to them, or I could go and work in one. Right, I'll go and work in one. It's kind of always a slightly deep end approach, I suppose, is the only theme. And literally, as we've been talking, I've only just realised that. So thank you. I've learned something today.
There you go. This is we aim to serve. Just to reassure. Keith said, "You can't be 50, Sarah." Saffron said, "You can't be 50, Sarah." And Phil, somebody said she's not a day past 25, and Phil said 50 is a distant memory. So it's all relative. Well, so you're making this really hard, actually, for me to think of the next question, because you just in one breath mentioned happiness, restlessness, the thoughts in our head, how you learn. We're going to come back to those things, because I'm my bad. I didn't even mention Sainsbury's in my intro. I literally skipped it. I don't know if you noticed, but I mean that perhaps many would see as the pinnacle moment in terms of in the fellowship. You were the only one of 18, I think, who was on the full main proper board, full fat. And so I'd just love to hear about your Sainsbury's experience, that period, and what it's like to be on the board as a marketer, because for many that will be a rare occurrence in their careers, if ever.
And I never really thought about it that much at the time. That's another theme. I sort of have it can't be that tricky, let's get on with it. And it's only afterwards when someone much more considered like you makes that observation mark that I go, oh yeah, that was quite important, or that was quite a big deal. I'm not very good at seeing that in the moment. And maybe that's helpful because it means I basically don't look down and I never get vertigo. But on reflection, and also I should clarify, right? What I was on was the operating board. So the 8 people are who ran Sainsbury's day to day, not the PLC board of non-execs. Yes, I mean, you know the difference, but just for everyone, just to understand. So I wasn't a non-exec. There were 8 of us who ran Sainsbury's day to day. So yes, the sort of full fat operating board. And look, it was bloody brilliant, all right? It was brilliant because you're surrounded. I don't just mean the other 7 people. I mean the strength in depth. An organisation like Sainsbury's, and many folks on this call will have experienced that sort of strength in depth of unbelievable folk all around you, which is fabulous. You know, and people who, it's quite extraordinary, you know, people who were at that organisationally, hierarchically, the level, you know, the sort of reports of us, you know, are now sitting on the board of Tesco, and, you know, an unbelievable cohort of folk, which is incredible support network, which I absolutely adored. I mean, obviously it's not easy and there's quite a lot to do, and you end up, you make sacrifices, but it's always about, for me, it's always about whether the sacrifices are worth it. And while I was there, it felt like it was. The joy of that role, particularly, you mentioned being a customer person, being a CMO on the board. I was brought onto the board. I mean, what an amazing brief I was given. I was brought onto the board with the word, I served 2 different chief execs, for Justin, the first one. And he said, I'm creating this role on the board. It didn't exist on the board. I'm creating this role on the board because I feel like I'm the only one who thinks about customers naturally, and I need a friend. So your job is to bring the customer voice back to Sainsbury's because I can't do it on my own. Which is a hell of a brief for a customer person, isn't it, for a marketeer? It was brilliant. And it sort of gave me license in literally every conversation I was ever in to say, why is that a good idea for a customer? You know, it's a fairly simple question, but if you say it 25 times a day, other people start thinking it too. And it was a joy of a brief. And then that sort of blossomed, and this was the really cool bit for me. It blossomed into the customer becoming the watchword, or customer thinking becoming the watchword of objectivity, in a way that most businesses would put finance in that chair. So I chaired a thing called the trading board, which was the commercial decision-making forum of the business. Everything that wasn't CapEx got decided there, the big things. And I chaired it. And the reason I chaired it was because I was seen as objective, because it was basically the customer chairing our decision-making. And all the little P&Ls, grocery online, fresh, frozen, mobile, bank, you name it, all the P&Ls that added up to 32 billion quid were partisan, and they had agendas, and the customer didn't. And I thought that was an incredible joy of a job to do. I think I was very lucky to be in and be part of creating a culture where people saw customer voice as objective and gave it primacy.
And I think Sarah, that's certainly, you know, the objective around customers certainly characterized your career, and perhaps, you know, you've been at the forefront of that. Perhaps that's certainly one of the key ingredients to your success. I think about when Mark talked about Sainsbury's being one of your pinnacles. In fact, that's probably one of a few, quite frankly. I mean, I want to talk a little bit. I know we've just had International Women's Day just gone by, and one of the key sort of things, and I was just pulling out a couple of stats, and it came to pass there was only 1 in 5 women actually ever sort of, you know, get to go from being a CMO into a CEO type of role in the FTSE 100 anyway. And clearly you were able to make that transition with Love Honey. And in fact, the quote that I thought was quite amusing was sort of taking the bedroom brand into the boardroom was sort of what you were able to achieve. And so tell us a little bit about that transition. How were you able to elevate sort of marketing into the boardroom in that role? And perhaps some lessons along the way.
Yeah. Do you know, I think I found it easier to beat the marketing brand customer drum when it was in my job title. That sounds weird, doesn't it? Because it's kind of, it's expected, and it's kind of easier. And for me, the thing I found hardest with first time CEO was So let me paint a picture. The business that I joined, the mindset, the situation in which I found myself was one of sort of permanent triage. So this is a business that had grown meteorically. Obviously, it's maths, growth slows down. That's how percentages work. And I mean, it was slowing to only 20%, you know. So, you know, we had this fabulous, but it had outgrown its shell. You know, it needed to grow, to cast off that skin and grow a new one, kind of thing. Which meant that all the system, it was a £120 million business when I joined, 200 when I left. And so that kind of growth, you can't do it on the systems that were put in place when you were turning over 10 million. And that's what we were doing. We were absolutely held together with string and sticky tape. So I went in and I had this wonderful position of every line on the P&L, every business process. Even I, as a not experienced transformation CEO, could see what good looked like and could see what needed to be done. So it was wonderful because there was so much upside, so much low-hanging fruit. You were sort of walking into it. But at the same time, it was really hard to prioritize, because everything had a really valid reason for doing it that would hit the bottom line this year. And so I was in this sort of permanent state of triage. You know, how bad is this? Do I let that one go? Do I intervene? How do I do this? And some of them were big. I also felt a need to prove that I wasn't just a bigger marketeer. You know, I was a CEO. So actually, I think probably the mistake I made was I established that my marketing director was good, and then I probably neglected marketing in that whole, I've got to do everything. I don't want to look like I'm just going to my comfort zone, and I spent more time elsewhere. And I probably, in hindsight, I think we would have all benefited, and the marketing director would have welcomed me getting more involved, and that was probably a mistake. I mean, you know, you can course, in a fast moving business, you course correct very fast. So a few months in, I thought, I know I need to do that, and you hop back over there. But the first time CEO thing is a thing. You know, you spend ages running headfirst at the first time CEO brick wall, and making your case that, you know, I've basically done all the bits, I just haven't had the title, is roughly the case you make. But it is different, and it takes more adjustment than maybe you realise from the outside.
You're not the first CEO I've heard talk about essentially having to give something up that they love and are good at to be a CEO, and having to put a deliberate distance to give people space. If you believe in empowering and so on, then it's sort of a natural consequence. Now then, so you're going to share some news about your new job. It's not widely known because X company is relatively private. So you can tell us a bit about that. And then why did you join? Why is it exciting? And also sort of in that, do you have a sense of, in any way, of sort of coming home to being more customer focused? Maybe this is just me wanting you to say that. But anyway, you tell us your news.
Thank you for feeding me my line. That's great. No, for God's sake, break it. What are you like, you lot? Don't get overexcited. It's not that big a deal. We just didn't do a press release. I started as Chief Customer Officer at Nandos at the beginning of the year.
What? That's insane. That's unbelievable. Breaking. That's amazing. By the way, Nandos is like my all-time favorite sort of brand going. I'm an absolute Nandos geek. So, Sarah, congrats. That's
Excellent.
Awesome. Tell us a bit about it.
The Sunset Burger's back. You'll be delighted to know, Ritchie.
Amazing.
So I when I got the call about the job, I said, I actually said, look, I don't think it's one for me. Thank you very much for thinking of me. It's always flattering, isn't it? I don't think it's one for me, but there are some great people I know who might be up for a call. And I never want to call them headhunters, but you know what I mean? The search, the headhunter said, okay, fine. And we chatted about the other people and who I recommended and bigged up. And then she did the whole sort of, well, we don't know each other. Can I just do my little get to know you interviewing for other things? And I was like, yeah, of course you can. Expecting the same conversation you have with every research firm in the world, you know, about sectors and roles and da, da, da. And she just asked me a series of incredibly interesting, thought-provoking questions that slightly stopped me on my tracks. And I just thought, you're great. I don't know who, I love you. You're brilliant. And she really made me think for an hour, which was amazing. And then at the end of that, I was talking about what's important to me, which in summary is the culture, people, values, fit it trumps everything. I need to be in a place where I'm using my strength, and I need to be learning. If those three are true and emphatically ticked boxes, anything else actually is secondary. Industry, job title, remit, all comes second. And, you know, and therefore my approach to thinking about what I do next is I just meet people, because you know, I kiss the frogs, because there's going to be a click and you don't know where the click is. You can't tell if there'll be a click on paper. You have to meet the people. At which she said, I've been headhunting for Nandos for about 10 years. Trust me, there'll be a click. Go and bloody meet them, please. So I did. And there was.
Amazing. And so you said you started in the role. Is it kind of already kicked off for you? How many weeks in?
This, I think 7. But I'm still in, this tells you something about the organization. I'm still in induction. I'm allowed to put my eyes on things, but not my hands. My objective every week is to build, this is what I've been, my boss, the objective is build relationships, understand the stories, get to know people.
Amazing. That's really, really cool. Oh, by the way,
I'm not allowed to do any doing.
Well, look, I hope you're doing lots of eating, because flipping heck, man, that's the key. But Sarah, interestingly, I read a quote about you that said, "I can't imagine ever working in the same sector twice." That's what you said.
Yeah.
Why did you say that? What's the dream of going cross sector all the time?
I think that two things. One, I always think that whatever job I'm doing, I always feel like I've won the job lottery, and I invest emotionally in the business and the brand. And therefore, by definition, if you stay in that sector, you go to a competitor. And I know people who are industry experts, and that's what they do, and that's brilliant, and that works for them. But, you know, when I was sitting in Sainsbury's and you get a call about a job at Tesco, I just couldn't imagine doing it. And similarly, you know, you're in Heineken, you get a job about AB InBev, you're like, why would I do that? It just doesn't work for me. I just can't imagine doing it. It's like, I think I've got the best job in this industry, and I'm building and building and building it and trying to create a thing that really has resonance and lasting, enduring impact. And then I go over here and I try to do something sort of similar but different with a slightly different logo. It's just not me. It just doesn't, those synapses just don't join up. So it's less about I relentlessly want to go to new industries. I'm very proud of the fact that I think what we do is entirely transferable. You know, understand what people want and will pay money for, understand what you can do brilliantly, find the overlap and create demand for the bit in the middle. That what business doesn't need that. So I love the transferability of it. And to me, that's its strength. And I couldn't imagine sort of, you know, same job, different logo. Just don't work for me. It's not religious, it just doesn't work.
Yeah. So I'm going to take us back to your opener where you talked about restlessness and happiness. And let me just say the question out loud and see if it works. The two seem to contradict at one level, in terms of restlessness will mean the next thing, and happiness will be treasuring what I've got here and now. So is there a conflict in there, or is there a congruence? What do you think?
I think that's one of the hardest questions I've ever been asked. I think they can come into conflict, and that's when you've got to listen to the voice in your head, I think. I mean, my point of view on happiness, if it's helpful, is right. And I guess before I go here, it's not that I'm not trying to sort of claim any like groundbreaking original thought here. This is kind of an accumulated collection of my my worldview, really. Does that make sense? But I think that our society has got us all into a sort of thought habit. And the thought habit is that success breeds happiness. What I mean by that is, you know, from a really young age, you know, oh, look, she's crawling. Can she walk? You know, I remember having a row with my mum once when the kids were little. Alex swam a width, and she was like, "Way, we were on holiday. Way, that was brilliant. Well done. Can you do a length?" And I was like, "Shut the fuck up, Grandma." Didn't say it quite like that. Like, let's just celebrate the widths. Do a few more widths, love. Widths are great. You'll do lengths one day. You know, because we have this thing. You know, you did well in GCSEs. Let's see your A levels. You know, and what that means in adult life is we immediately get to, oh, well, when I've got that promotion, I'll be happy. When I'm a marketing manager, I'll be happy. When we get married, I'll be happy. You know, when we finish the extension, we'll be happy. There's always something that allows us to be happy, and at the moment it's preventing us. And actually the brain science is the other way around. So, you know, all these incredible brain scientists who I read about and can't quite imagine their lives because they're so cool, but, you know, have proven that actually it's the other way around. Happy brains are more successful. Happy brains are 32% more productive, more creative, they live longer too, more useful, more everything than a neutral, never mind a stressed out brain. And so to me, happiness isn't a consequence of achievement, it creates achievement. So, you know, so happiness breeds success, not success breeds happiness. And society pushes us into this awful doom loop of when this has happened, I'll be happy. And the brain science is you've got to put it the other way. We've got to say, when we're happy, we perform better. And then amazingly, what happens, we all know a bit of dopamine squirt. Dopamine opens up the learning receptors in our brains. We learn, so we're better next time, so we're even happier. I mean, it's just this positive circle, and society pushes us the other way. And so to me, the whole point of happiness is choose happiness first and the success will come, rather than the other way around. And maybe that's the antidote to the restlessness, right? So for me, the restlessness, I push the restlessness away for a while. I stick it to the back, you know, I hide it away. It's just a phase. And then after a little while, the phase has gone on a bit long and it's a habit, and maybe it's a thing now and you've got to listen to it. And because at that point, that restlessness is saying to me, your circle's in danger of going the other way. You've got to stop and you've got to reverse the circle. So maybe that's how they fit together. And we can control the circle, right? That's the other thing that the brain scientists have proven, is a tiny proportion of how happy we are comes from from what happens to us. I think it's only 10%. I think 90% of how happy we identify ourselves to be comes from within. And that's from all those incredible studies of, you know, landmine victims and lottery winners and people with extremes, all that stuff, which is remarkable reading. We can control it. And that's why I get a bit preachy about happiness. And the teams I lead, I'm much more worried about. I don't mean keeping them happy as in let's all have smashed avocado all the time. I mean fulfilled, happy, productive, worthwhile work that makes everybody sing.
That's such a great insight. In lots of comments there. I'll hand to Ritchie in a sec, but that's brilliant. But I am going to choose to believe that you did F-bomb your gran, by the way.
I swear it all the time.
Yeah. But back to you, Ritchie.
Well, look, it's a super insight, and I knew it's funny, and I'm certainly not going to claim that to have sort of an articulate sort of view on just the way that you did. But the one thing that sort of resonated was when I was watching, and by the way, I'm not political, but I was watching that sort of the Harry-Meghan interview just this week. And that was sort of a little bit of my reflection and takeaway from that was, you know, you could have what is perceived to be almost the pinnacle of ultimate success in many, many different ways. And yet, right, what's in your head is a totally different kettle of fish. And I think a lot of us sort of really, really sometimes forget that. So I think it's beautifully articulated, actually, you know, the happiness first, success comes later. Actually, in that potential case, it was success and then the happiness fell through in that sort of environment. So, look, it just, what a great insight to resonate on.
Well, Sarah, if you see Megan, give her my number.
There we go. There we go. Or let at least watch the interview. But I'm not going to ask as hard a question as Mark did just now. I'm going to take a question from the audience. So Barney asks, and I think it's quite pertinent to the overarching debate in our marketing industry, but what do you see as the big differences between the CCO role and the CMO role?
Oh, good question. And I think I've spent most of my life on the cusp of saying, I don't really care, let's just do some good work, which is not helpful. So that's not my answer, Barney, and I'm not dissing your question. Because I think what I'm learning is it is important. And so the reason that I used to think it wasn't terribly, or my instinct, my sort of, my reptilian response is, it doesn't really matter, does it? We all know what we're trying to do here. Is actually the second part of that isn't true. We don't all know what we're trying to do here. And I've learned that a few times more recently, because I had the joy of growing up in such consumer facing businesses. You know, in Unilever, no one ever worried about the differences in those days anyway. So the semantic differences just didn't matter, because let's face it, the brands ruled the roost and called the shots, and who was a bloody brilliant place to be a young brand manager, right? You know, you ran the P&L and you had a cross-functional team and happy days. And we sort of all knew all that stuff I was talking about earlier was just in everyone's blood. And I think it starts to matter more. What I realise, I was a bit slow on the uptake here, forgive me, Barney, that it matters more in organisations that don't think like that. So I've joined Nandos in a place of wanting to go to the next level of customer centricity. And that's why I'm there. That's the job I've come to help do. And it's really interesting to, you know, it is a bit like coming home, Mark, to your earlier point, both cultural values and the discipline. But what's fascinating is those words, you know, is it marketing? Is it customer? What is it? I've always thought, doesn't really matter. My official title in Sainsbury's, I think, was probably still marketing director. But, you know, Mike was like, I don't care what you call yourselves, just do what you need to do. And that's sort of my approach. But in companies that are trying to affect change, that are trying to transition to more customer centricity, it does matter. I mean, and loosely, I suppose the sort of the difference these days is a CCO remit, I would expect, has every customer touch point under its auspices. I can't get that excited about territory and remit. I'm much more interested in, are we all pointing in the same direction? And I think it's things like the CCO title gives me license to go, right, this is the I will lead the business's thinking on growth, because growth comes from customers. And I think it's much easier to do that, to take that lead and run with it when you have when you're set up in that CCO way. I mean, the way we talk about it in Nandos is we say the CCO role has to drive demand, has to work out how to grow, has to work out how to drive demand. And the COO is, you know, she's my partner in crime, and I'm demand, she's supply. Boom, dead simple. And I think that's the neatest articulation of it. I struggle. You can tell this is the fluffiest, blurriest answer I've given, because it's sort of not on my radar, and I'm only learning it now. That being, you know, because I've just always assumed whatever you call me, I know what my job is and I'm going to do it anyway, whether my title suggests I should or not. Actually, that is a little bit naive. Makes sense.
That does make complete sense. So I'm just going to make a reference to something that I've just recalled from my memory. There's a great documentary on Niall Wilson, his ups and downs, and his dad was interviewed, and he used to work at Direct Line, and we used to sponsor Niall Wilson. And he said his advice to Niall was, you know, when he lost the way, be careful. Every single interaction you have, you leave a little brand stamp, a personal brand stamp. And, you know, I'm just going to pull this from the sky, but you are somebody who probably not knowingly at all, but you just always leave a really good brand stamp wherever you go. So there's a bit of flattery, but hey, nothing's ever perfect. So you've had some bumps in the road. So within what you're willing to share, can you give us maybe an example of where you've had to be super resilient and find fortitude in difficult circumstances?
I mean, I think there's as much bump as there is road, really. And look, there are different types of bumps, aren't there? There are mini bumps every day. There are kind of medium-sized bumps that actually are quite hard. But the medium-sized bumps, I think, the small and medium-sized bumps are quite useful, because that's where you sort of develop your skills to deal with them and grow some confidence and grow some resilience, so that when the really big fuck-off bumps come along, you've got something to deal with them. You know, I guess I had a fairly spectacular bump. It felt spectacular in my world anyway. I had a fairly big bump at Unilever when I got to that. I hit my first restless milestone, right? And God, it does sound like I haven't got much patience, doesn't it? I got to that point. I don't know, like, you know, you go up I got to that point of becoming the angry young brand manager. You know, I was sort of senior brand manager, knocking on the door of marketing manager, whatever that was. I can't quite get their hierarchies right, but that kind of thing. And I started to get restless, and I hadn't understood the value of networks. I thought networking was a Machiavellian load of toss, and I thought that the work should speak for itself. Little did I know, citizens. And I still think networking, if it's Machiavellian, is awful. But if you think about a network as a group of interesting people that you can call on to have great conversations, suddenly it's quite a cool thing. And so I resigned from Unilever in a huff. Resigned in a huff. Fell out with my boss. And then I had my 3 months notice to work out, and I went around systematically, childishly burning every bridge I could find. In fact, I probably made some bridges just so I could then burn them. It was awful. And with 2 months, 3 weeks and 2 days of my management notice served, therefore 3 days left, I realized I was making a horrible, horrible mistake. And if I left now, I would never crack this thing that I was butting against. So I went and unresigned, and I then spent the next 6 months eating humble pie and rebuilding. And I'm very, very glad I did.
Wow. That's a lovely share, by the way, Sarah. Very cool, very interesting. And probably quite a big life lesson.
I had to go and ask my team. I had to go and ask the team I was part of for permission to rejoin it. Yeah, we had a moment. It was brilliant. Andy Duncan, who was marketing director, who then went on to run Channel 4, and an absolutely amazing human being. I went to see him, and he said, "Okay, I'll take you back." And I said, "Right, but the team might not. There might be organ rejection because I've been a bit of a cow." And he said, "Okay." So there was another job somewhere else that I could escape to, and so I had a moment with the team and sort of said, "Will you take me back?" And it had to be unanimous from my point of view and theirs. As in, if anyone had a doubt, I'd go and do the other job, and it was okay. It all worked out.
You know what? Do you know what? By the way, that spells to me, and I love the reframe on community, and I love and the network. I think that's awesome way to think about it, particularly for people who are skeptical or shy. But quite frankly, you said that the work sort of almost that's a bit of an aside to the work speaking for itself. They never would have kept you on had the work not spoken for itself as well. So that's kind of an interesting sort of duality that's probably gone on that maybe you hadn't considered. Yeah. Look, by the way, you've got a couple of people who want to join your team at Nandos, by the way. So that's pretty cool. Send all CVs in. So that's great. But I actually want to ask a question from Hugo, and it's quite interesting where he talks about sort of peer pressure. So and more sort of on the family side. So he's saying, look, in the face of social media peer pressure, as a parent, how can you sort of inject that sort of level happiness first principle into your kids when I guess social media and pressure is always pushing them to see beyond and move beyond?
Yeah. Oh Christ, I don't know. It's really hard. I think there's look, I'm very mindful of time, and I know you've got to a hard close. And it's a great question, and it could last all day. I think there's a huge role modeling point. My children have the dubious fortune of living with two people who don't often worry about fear or favour of the crowd, or at least don't show it to them. I think that's quite important. I think we spend a lot of time, particularly as far as social media goes. My kids are not there yet. My 12-year-old is a slightly different case. So it'll probably be my 8-year-old who comes through first. But we spend quite a lot of time trying to get them to think about why people write the things they do. And don't just read it and believe it. Think about who is that person and what's their agenda, because no one ever writes anything without an agenda. Is the sort of thing I try to drum in. I just want them to think. I can't shield them from it. There's nothing I can do to stop the encroaching world. That they have to be part of the world. But I think the only thing I can do to prepare them for it is to learn the sort of critical thinking, objective skills that I hope they apply to it, rather than just becoming a sheep who's frightened and follows mindlessly.
I love that sentiment about everybody has an agenda, and if you can work it out and have those and that discerningness, then that's super. I'm going to skip my key takeaways for this morning, but wish you a great journey ahead with Nandos. I think it's just such a fabulous role, quite frankly, Sarah, and I'm just super jealous because I think it's got so much potential. And of course, I'm just a massive fan. But it's been an absolute brilliant having you on this morning. Looking forward.
I'll take you for some chicken sometime when we can.
Oh, Sarah, honestly, that'd be fabulous. But I'll pass over to Mark for his closing remarks.
Now there's an offer, Ritchie. You should take that up. So,
100%.
Yeah. Also, congratulations from me, Sarah, on an amazing new role. Just to do a quick recap, we've talked about restlessness, we've talked about happiness, we've talked about the voices in your head. You said you don't get vertigo because you don't look down. The ebbs and the flows of being a CEO, not being a CEO. Coming home, what's important to you is culture, strength, and learning. You have to kiss a few frogs to find the click. But perhaps the two biggest things I take away is happy brains are more successful. It's the other way around. And also your humbleness, to eat humble pie and go back round and unwind what you've done at Unilever. There was that example, but I think it comes through in every moment of this conversation. And for that, I can only applaud you and herald you. So it's been wonderful having you on the show. As ever, we could have gone on for ages. There's a ton of unanswered questions. Thanks everybody for listening.
Oh, I haven't looked. I'm sorry about that. I should
have
been.
It would have been impossible to keep up. We could have done the same time again. Maybe we will in the future. A year into Nandos or something. That would be amazing. But thank you so much, Sarah. And
thank you.
Thanks everybody for listening. Just a quick trailer for next week. We've got Richard Huntington, Chief Strategy Officer at Saatchi's, one of the brains behind the Direct Line campaign and success in recent years. A wit, a raconteur, razor sharp insight and big brains. So tune into that. But for now, thank you again, Sarah.
Thank you very much,
My
Sarah.
pleasure. Thanks for having me.